Good after. Do it every time. Good afternoon. It's another episode of BX Live at Lunch. It's three dudes today. It's three dudes. We're missing our friend, three dudes and Lexi. But BX Live at Lunch today's topic is effort level. Effort is something that your coach will gauge, you will gauge yourself, and it's a way to manage your recovery, your rest, and the exercise options that you choose for the next day of exercise. So today we're going to talk about how do you manage or gauge the effort level that you're putting forward in your training. Yes, there is a numerical value for effort. There's also an existential feeling for your effort, and there is the trainer just thinks you ain't doing enough kind of effort. You know, like there's all these things.
There's also effort like you don't feel like you're doing enough when you probably are.
That's true. And then that's here to tell you you did enough. Don't whine about your effort. It was amazing. And we're not just blowing smoke. What I'm saying is we're here to talk about effort. So as always, if you have questions, please feel free to hit us in the comments down below. We will answer those live right here. And if you have other questions, later after the episode has been broadcast, you can come to the training room or to the weight room or to Body Shop X and let us know. Hit us in the messages. You can find us. Boom, 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 boom. They're a little off. So let's see. Actually, Thomas's is in the right spot. And then I'm in my right spot. But Zach's is right here. Boom. So find those handles. We're fixing that. Don't worry. I apologize for that not being fixed today. And if you have questions, you can find Lexi right over. That's right. No, right there. Oh, this is always weird to go backwards. I'm just saying it's right there below Zach. All right, good stuff. So effort. How do you measure effort? I'm going to start out in the front and saying effort measured in math is measured in intensity and is measured kind of in percentages of your max effort level. So when we measure a one max repetition, like a max rep, or what are they, what's the things? We just call it a max. You know, what do they call them? Max reps, M-R-M-E-X, I don't know.
1 RM?
Yeah, that
one
thing.
Rep max.
1 rep max, whatever. Yes, 1 rep max. When you do your 1 RM, when you're 1 rep max, that is the amount of effort, the maximum amount of effort you can give towards a specific lift when we're talking about weights. And so to measure your effort in your training program, to give you a predetermined effort level, we will measure your effort in the percentage of the weight lifted. And that can be done by giving someone, if they do a 1 rep max of, we're going to make it easy, if they do 100 kilos and you give them an 80% effort level, then we're talking 80 kilos for the amount of the working set. So if it's 4 sets of 3 reps, at 80%, then you're giving 80% effort for those 3 reps. And so you're doing the 80 kilos because your max level of effort was 100 kilos.
Right.
That's the simplest way you can put it mathematically.
I think intensity is a good word for it too, as there's lots of different ways you can measure effort across the board. But intensity is kind of the thing that sticks with all of them. So like you have your percentages, you have your heart rate, you have rate of perceived exertion, RPE. Mm-hmm. You have reps left in the tank. So it's all kind of centered around that word of intensity.
And then to go along with another broad one, instead of doing weights, if you have cardio, ways that you can do that is if you're doing like a set mileage for running or biking, you can do it based on pace. So of how your pace is, whether it's a cadence for biking, whether it's mile pace, or if it's shorter distances. Different things like that. Pace is another good one for more aerobic exercises and things of that nature.
So when it comes to cardio, pace and heart rate are going to be 2 of the major ones. Pace is really good because it'll help you kind of have a number in your mind to really get to. Heart rate's another really good one if you're not really feeling it that day and your pace isn't going to be able to get there relative to your overall. Maybe you're just having an off day. Heart rate is going to be really good so that you don't push too hard and give too much effort.
Mm-hmm. And then when you're doing your heart rate, you want to kind of find a zone in the percentage of your heart rate that you're staying in. So like, is it, if you're giving 60 to 70% of your max level heart rate? Are you giving 70 to 80%? Very similar, but the effort is based off what your maximum capacity is. And like we said, there are mathematical equations to find those. But if you are not into doing the math, then how do you do that when you're not into the math? You want to find out, how's my level? Am I putting out the amount of effort? Am I where I need to be? And another one of those ways is the rate of perceived exertion, called perceived, because that level of effort is based on how you feel and how you see what you're doing. And one of those scales is from a rating of 1 to 10, and you'll find different numbers. If you Google it, a quick Google search will get you the rate of perceived exertion, and they'll give you a number scale. When we use it, if I say I want you to do 10 reps with an RPE of 7. That means if I give you an RPE of 7, it's something around, you should have 3 reps left that you feel that you should be able to do. And when you finish that, and if I'm giving you an RPE of 10, I want you feeling like that set is the most you can do. So, but I don't want you going to failure. So you have to kind of know your limits. And that's one that you don't give that one to a rookie or a beginner or a novice. That's not something they're going to understand what it feels like to be at that top level of exertion for themselves.
Right. I was just about to go off on the pros and cons of some of the different effort scales. So like you were saying, RPE, you really have to know your body and kind of know where you're at. Beginner might not know that, so it's going to be a little bit worse for beginners until they kind of get a bearing of what their body feels like when they hit that limit. But a pro is, again, you don't have to have complicated numbers. It's kind of just how you're feeling.
Right.
And it's not going to depending day to day, it's not going to depend on how you're feeling, really. Like if you're having a bad day, you can still use that scale.
Yeah.
Pace is one that I'm black and white. Like I'm really logical, so I like to hit pace. It gives me exactly what I need to hit, and I know how to hit it.
Define pace, right? As far as like time and how.
So pace is like, you can have different paces in terms of distance, but like the most common I would feel like is like the mile pace. So like how fast you're running a mile in, and you don't necessarily have to be running a mile, but that's like the pace if you were to run a mile. So if you're doing like a 7-minute mile pace and you're doing a half mile, you'd run 3:33.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's another good one. That one, the con would be it doesn't really take into account how you're feeling that day. Heart rate would be pros. It takes into account how you're feeling that day. The cons would be it can be expensive if you're getting like a heart rate monitor,
Right,
stuff like that.
Monitor. But the way things are going with the heart rate stuff, you can almost get that at a decent price. I'll say for your wrist, and I will say even if it is expensive, most people nowadays are walking around with some form of fit tech that they can measure that with too.
Even if you're getting something like specific for like a heart rate, like chest strap, I think they'll run you like maybe $50 if you're going for it.
Right.
So,
When they used to be anywhere between $150, $250, $300 a piece.
And to go along with heart rate, not necessarily at the time of effort, but if you are putting in a certain amount of effort for a couple of weeks in a row, you're going to notice your resting heart rate go down. And that would be, so as your fitness level goes up, your resting heart rate tends to go down to where it'll plateau at a good number. And that's because your heart is pumping better, and it's doing that because of your cardiovascular fitness. And so with all the new heart rate technology, and you don't even need technology, all you need is a timer, and you can count yourself for however long and get it for your heart rate per minute. And so your resting heart rate, that's right when you wake up, the better that your heart is doing based on your fitness level is going to be a really good indicator of how your effort has been in the long term, or whether or not you've been starting. It's going to definitely change from when you first start to where you are in your training program.
Right. And as you become fit, your heart is really adapting to that and becoming more efficient. That's why you see more efficient usage and why your resting heart rate goes down.
Another one, the body's going to adapt. So that's another cool thing about effort. When you can manage your effort level, you can kind of dictate or predict what the outcome of your program should be. Maybe not to the direct pinpoint of what it should be, but by combining these particular effort levels, you have the ability to recover. So like if you're giving an 80% effort, you still have something left in the tank for Tuesday. On Monday, you have something left in the tank for Tuesday, Wednesday. But if you're giving a 95 to 100% effort, your recovery time is going to need to increase, right? So that's, you know that, and then you can kind of take it into account what your body needs to do to feel at its best to do the next workout. A lot of times people will just kind of go into a workout and we've talked about this before, you go 100 miles an hour, but if you're not gauging your effort level, if you go 100 miles an hour 7 days in a row,
You're going to learn a hard lesson.
yeah, a very hard lesson, right?
And it might take you 1 or 2 times or 3 times, or some people just never learn. That hard lesson is a result of just pushing it all out. We've talked about it before on the podcast that if you're pushing it all out all the time, your body's eventually going to break down and not be able to handle it. It's not sustainable.
Right. So then if you're measuring effort, you're also going to measure what your best recoverable effort is, and that one's not necessarily a scale, but you can measure it off of like your max recoverable volume, that would be like how much you can do over time that allows you to recover for the next period, right? So being able to know how much effort you can put in and recover for the next week also matters without deteriorating, because if you go too hard 1 week, then when the body doesn't get a chance to recover, then you don't actually build onto the strength that you created the week before. So if you go 100 miles an hour for 7 days, the next 7 days are probably going to not look as good as the last 7 days. At some point in time, your body's just going to quit on you, and you're going to undercut your progress because you didn't manage your effort level and your intensity.
Right. So I think there's 2 extremes to that coin. There's the extreme of going too hard too often. And for those people, I would say it's okay if you get to a workout and you get through the workout and you would rate that like a 4 out of 10.
Yeah.
That's probably, if your program's designed properly, in there for a good reason. You probably have some heavier days or harder days coming up, higher intensity days coming up, or you just had some higher intensity days and you need some time to kind of recover from those. The other side of the coin, on the other extreme, I would say, would be the people that are trying to over-recover and haven't really done any training stimulus that will stimulate change to begin with. So making sure that you're balancing out your intensities, not just going 4 out of 10 all the time, but also not going 10 out of 10 all the time.
Yeah, good range in there. I would say somewhere between 5 and 8. Managing that between that area, that range should be a good enough to recover and see gains and progress in the long term. And sometimes you will overdo the intensity, something that your body can't naturally hold, and then plan a long recovery that's longer than normal. Say your recovery might end up being a 4-day recovery after a very overreaching day the week before. So say you overreach on a Saturday and you're doing some like very heavy, I'll say negatives or something, where you actually need help on multiple reps to get it up. And then you take Sunday completely off. Monday you do an easy stretch day with some effort in that day, and then Wednesday you pick back up, and then Thursday you go hard again, and then not the overreaching hard, but you go back into your regular cycle again. So yeah.
And I found that with our programs, we do a pretty good job of making sure the effort level is there each week, and that helps with like how we talked about before is like progression. If you go and do 1 week and it's really good, you want to make sure you can build off of that. Mm-hmm. So you're still giving in the effort that you want each week, but the next week you still want to be able to go up in weight or go up in reps. And so that way it's not to where, like we said, it's not going backwards.
Yeah.
You want to be building up, and to build up, you can go back a couple of steps. You don't want to go up for a couple of weeks or for a week and then drop way down and then come back. It's a lot better to progress that slightly over time.
Right.
And we've had people that will go super hard one day, and we'll have to tell them to kind of tone it back at the beginning of the workout, so that way they make it all the way through.
Oh yeah.
Because we've had lots of times where someone will start out at 100%, and then they're going to kind of just ease the rest of the way. And we want to make sure where you can start strong, but also finish that whole day's workout.
Oh, yeah.
I think a lot of that comes from like motivation too. People get highly motivated and think that it's going to happen right away. And it's kind of that we want it now mentality. And if I go intuitively in your mind, you're going to think if I go 100% for 2 weeks, that's better than going 50% for 2 weeks, just because that's more volume of work. I'm going to get better. When in reality, anything you do that is done the right way, that's sustainable, is going to be slow and over time.
Right.
And people don't want to hear that. They get motivated, like I said, and then they'll just go off and go 100%, 100 miles an hour. And eventually that's going to set you back. You're going to get sick. You're going to get hurt. Something bad's going to go wrong. And then you're going to end up back at square one, or you're going to be even worse off than when you started.
Oh yeah, I think it's like, if we just come to a close, I'm going to say that if you have a steady, consistent process over time that's not overdone and or underdone, you're going to see progress. And there's a range there. It's not just one, right? So like if your range, like he said, we were talking earlier, is you're not feeling great that day, but you still put in effort, you still may see progress. And it might be better than doing nothing over the course of 2 weeks. But if you're doing somewhere between, 70 and 85% of an effort, and it feels like the day you're supposed to do 85%, you just do 65 or 70, that's still good. That's still okay. There's nothing wrong with that. So steady, consistent effort over the course of time will make progress. You don't have to go all in all the time. Anything else you want to close on?
No, I think that was a really good sum up.
Yeah, I think even pro athletes, it's kind of the common mentality of like people that aren't in that world to think he got there because he's working hard 24/7.
Right.
And it's really like scaled to where he does have those hard work sessions, or she does have those hard work sessions that are like all out, like she's sweating or he's sweating like all out, but then they have where they take a step back and recover. So the recovery is just as important.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. And then it's easy to look at a high level athlete in the day of the social media snapshot life and say, oh, that dude's killing it. And not really pay attention to the days they actually do sit and recover. If you listen to guys play, like, I play video games, or you ask them what they do when they're not doing the thing that gets them.
Yeah, you see on Instagram and it's like, oh, he must be putting in 100 hours a week into this, just all out. When in reality, a lot of that time is just spent recovering, waiting for the next session.
The no days off mentality can be overdone, right? And by no days off, if you say no days off, scheduling your rest day is not a day off. It's an actual design day to make you make progress. So,
and a lot of times it can just be a mental day where it's mentally challenging because you're so used to working out. Just taking a step back can be mentally challenging.
And catching that breath, time to breathe. So that's this week's Live at Lunch. We talked about effort, how to sustain effort. We talked about the different ways you can measure effort. And if you guys have any questions about your effort, just let us know. Send us a message or hit us up on our handles, on our Instagram account down below. Yeah.
I'm not even going to try.
You're not going to try. We really appreciate you guys watching this week's episode of BX Live at Lunch.
See y'all later.